Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
We have so much to talk about today. This might have to be a 3-part episode. That's how many crazy things are going on in our world. Hey, we've had some victories. We've had some current challenges. It's a great week and a lot going on. But we always like to back up. I was encouraging our folks to be a part of Marketshare. I've said for years now that the lead front lines of the battle on religious liberty are going to hit the marketplace first. We've already seen this. We're going to talk about this, hopefully, if we have time to get to it today. The politicization of the marketplace, especially around sexual issues, and just how hard it's becoming to actually express your faith or rights of conscience, right? Like even as we saw with the vaccination. And so I've been encouraging people, get together, all of our business leaders, get together, share resources, share ideas, share vision, have a common place, to come together. And that's that's what Marketshare is about. So talk about that, because we just had a gathering.
We had a great meeting in Marketshare. We talked about a seeming like a business in principles, but it's really not a business principle. It's not just a business principle. We talk about the principle of receiving feedback so you can grow. Yeah. Really, receiving feedback it's a spiritual issue. It's positioning ourselves in the place of humility to say, hey, we're not gods. We're not prideful. We're going to humble ourselves and receive feedback from those we trust, not just from everybody.
Which is something, by the way, in our church team, our leadership team, we embrace this as a core
value. That's our
value,
grow, and that's one of the behaviors we look for is asking for feedback from those around you. And what's interesting is because receiving feedback actually ties into your identity. Because your identity is in what you do, then you can't receive any feedback. Sure. Because it attacks who you are, right?
Yeah.
But if your identity is in the Lord and what you do is just what you do, then of course you receive feedback. So
you want feedback. You're hungry for feedback.
You want to grow, and that's part because you want to be a good steward of what God's given you. So we had 4 business leader owners up there on the panel discussion, and we broke down how the journey for each of them, what does it look like, what they struggle with. So we made it super practical and personal. It wasn't just someone teaching this issue.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight, the culture is what makes everything different. Like, I think in most church settings, if you have like a business person's breakfast, right? Everybody comes out, hey, how you doing? Good, praise the Lord. And you eat pancakes, and there's like zero depth. Yeah. Somebody gives a Bible study, and there's zero depth. Yeah. But when you create a culture like we're trying to create, where we're authentic, we realize our identity is not found in our perfection. We all have room to grow. We all have blind spots. We all want to become like Jesus. We all want to do it better. I mean, it creates such an environment where people are actually excited about being real.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's rare.
And that's what people look for. Because many times marketplace leaders are just as lonely as pastors sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
And
they feel like nobody to talk to, nobody understands what I'm going through.
You're the boss, and you can't really share anybody. You're looking for other people who can align with, people you can encourage, find encouragement, people who share your same struggles. Especially if you were trying to be a kingdom business person in the middle of a marketplace and everyone's cutthroat, everyone's about the money. Where do you find allegiance with other guys like you? And so we want to create an atmosphere which we can, connect, and we can encourage each other. We can pray for each other. I saw 2 business leaders, on the side just praying for each other. I love it. That's what we're looking for.
That emotional support, spiritual support, even technical support. Learning from other people, practical.
And that's what it is for us to make an impact for the kingdom. Like sometimes we get too spiritual about this, but God's giving us stewardship. What is spiritual is we make the best. We give our best. We work the hardest. We learn. We innovate, and that's how we take over God's kingdom, by doing hard work. The 4-letter word in the church sometimes is the word we never use, work, W-O-R-K. That's what it takes. And so we encourage. It's holistic. It's everything. So.
Yeah. Okay, and then 2 other things we want to hit on, and hopefully we'll get into this. But if not, that's okay too. I'm just looking at my time here because we'll pick it up next week because a lot is going on. Yeah. First of all, as we've been sharing with you, keeping you abreast of what's been going on with the battle for the unborn, this was a massive week of victory. It's not perhaps the greatest victory, but it's definitely a win. As Senate Bill 1 went from the Senate to the House, back to the Senate, and then to the governor's desk, and he signed that last Friday. And we're hearing estimates that somewhere between 80 to 95% of babies that were aborted in Indiana, that will be stopped. That will be saving those children's lives, which is great, which gives us an opportunity. We still have a lot of work to do, obviously, but it gives us an opportunity to start rebuilding a culture of life.
Yeah.
And understanding, again, I see even in the message I was talking about Sunday, which I encourage you to tune in on our series called Me, we talked about this whole disconnected worldview, which says, you're special, you're valuable, but if you're not perfect, we can abort you in your mother's womb. I mean, it's worldview craziness. And I think we're going to start sending the right message now, at least to young people, that the murder of the unborn is never a solution to whatever problem we're talking about.
Well, I think young people can connect the dot to see when you pick and choose your buffet line of, hey, you're special because this is politically expedient and this is a good narrative. But this other issue, we're going to abort, I'll do abortion on demand. Well, that's just inconvenient. We're not going to really talk about that. People can connect the dots and say, this doesn't really make sense.
And you and I were talking as well about another myth. That's one myth. The disconcerted kind of worldview flip-flops that are always happening. But the other thing is, the front page of the paper today headlines was fallout from abortion decision already taking place. And it was two of the biggest bullies in the state of Indiana, and I say this because they were bullies for the marriage debate, they're bullies on abortion, they're bullies over LGBT. It is the Cummings Corporation and Eli Lilly, two of the biggest economic engines in the state, also the most liberal, leftist, progressive businesses in the state, and they've come forth boldly on the high, moral high ground, which I always laugh when they do this, that somehow, this ruling in Indiana is going to set us back economically, and they're going to take their ball and go home. And
sounds familiar.
Yeah,
heard that story a couple times.
This was the threat that was always raised. Indiana is now going to become economically crippled because all of the big players are going to take their ball and go home. Yeah. To which I say, great, get out of here. Take your ball and go home. Make all the threats that you want. Because it creates this idea that somehow they have the moral high ground and that by leaving, they're doing, the righteous thing. And all of us, backwards Neanderthals here in Indiana are going to suffer economically because of this terrible decision. We've seen that this is a total lie because states that are the most conservative, and I would say most biblical, because that's where conservatism flows from, is biblical ideas, are the states that are most blessed. Remember when North Carolina was threatened by all the economic mercenaries out there, that their state was going to be attacked and they were going to lose all this business. Didn't happen. Yep. Texas has been a leader on a lot of these issues. I don't think Texas is...
They can't stop the flow of businesses to Texas.
Yeah, they can't leave California fast enough.
Texas, yeah.
And like you said, which is such a great point, where are you going to go? You're gonna leave Indiana and go set up shop in Illinois, where you're gonna get robbed blind by politicians in Texas? I mean, what a joke. The reason they come to our states is because we're fiscally conservative and we're morally conservative. We protect life unashamedly. So I just want to say this is all a bunch of hot air, and I get sick and tired of hearing it. But here we go again, and I just challenge our listeners, you watch in 3, 4, 5 years, first of all, see if they follow through on these ridiculous threats. How many Hollywood movie stars were supposed to have already left when Donald Trump was elected president? I think they're still here. So anyway, we make all these stupid threats, and I wish people would just follow through because, honestly, Indiana can do without you. We'll be just fine.
Well, I mean, this is the principle we've been sharing Marketshare all the time is what is a business but establishing a system and process in which you can implement your worldview and implement your kingdom. So when you establish a business, you're literally establishing a kingdom type. You don't call yourself a king, but you're the CEO, right?
Right, you're the leader.
You're not elected. Well, I guess that boards, but in general, you're the king. So basically, Eli Lilly and Cummings, they basically have their own kingdom, and they're using their kingdom's territory. They're using the kingdom's resources to wage war.
Kingdom values.
So my admonition to those who believe in God and the kingdom of God is, hey, that should urge you and spur you to go build, especially for the business owners, go build an awesome kingdom, your business as a vessel for God's kingdom, so that you can impact change for God's kingdom and not for the kingdom of this world. Because that's what they're doing. They're absolutely using their resource.
And I would say they have the power to do that. I don't mind that they're expressing their value system and what their company stands for. Great. but quit using, quit assuming you're being neutral or somehow you're being virtuous in doing so, or you're threatening the rest of us. If you believe that, just quietly leave. I mean, you don't have to announce it to the world.
Well, it's all posturing. It's all posturing. It's them dictating their worldview. I just say it's time for Christian.
It's them trying to shove their worldview down the rest of us, which we get accused of all the time.
Right.
But I think it's just good to kind of point that out. We're going to leave and economically punish all of you and hope all of Indiana's economy goes down the toilet because we don't agree with you on this abortion ruling, which again, they call it all kinds of euphemisms. But what we just did in Indiana was protect unborn children, the weakest and most vulnerable among us. This is actually government fulfilling its most legitimate God-given call, which is justice and righteousness and protecting life. Yeah. This is what government exists for, punishing evil and promoting righteousness. So I applaud all of our Congress, our State House leaders, senators who led boldly, and we applaud our governor for signing this piece of legislation. And we do hope that as far as enforcement mechanisms and things like that, supposedly there's some language that needs to be tightened up. Hopefully that'll happen in the January
and
session.
I think we've gone a long way since the when we tried to pass the RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Act in Indiana, and then we came back and forth, and
everybody caved.
Everyone caved. It's gone a long way, and I appreciate that.
So great job, everybody, and we appreciate our leadership here in Indiana. We appreciate years ago there was a prophetic word that came out. I think it was Chuck Pierce or Dutch Sheets, one of the two, or maybe both. They prophesied Indiana was going to be on the point of the spear. As it related to a lot of what was going on in our nation. And as I look back, that word was right on. We were on the point of the spear on marriage. We were on the point of the spear on religious liberty. Unfortunately, in both those areas, we caved. Yeah. And now we've been on the point of the spear as it's regarded the focus of sanctity of life and pro-life legislation. And with all eyes on us, we passed the test. So praise God.
I just want to say, on the discouraging note, I only saw, I guess, Kansas had a referendum on I guess the Supreme Court somehow dictated that abortion is legal until 22 weeks or something like that in their state. Kansas, a bright red state. Okay, and this last primary election, they had a vote in which they were able to create an amendment to the state constitution, I believe, that kind of knocks down the Supreme Court, and it got kind of destroyed. In other words, and the liberals are using that, saying that the country doesn't want pro-life, blah 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 blah, and I think the wording of the law was super confusing, and there was tons of money spent to promote the other side. Having said that, I just think right now with the Roe versus Wade coming down, it's time for us to actually engage in debate and argument. This is not time for us to relax. It's time because like you said, 50 years of a particular mindset. Because the law, sometimes people say the laws follow the mindset. I think sometimes the mindset follows the law. I mean, you think about what happened with Obergefell versus the gay marriage Supreme Court decisions. Public opinion totally shift after the Supreme Court decision. So right now, the law has been passed. We got to start working to shift the mindsets. Yeah.
As a biblical principle, there's a passage in the Bible that says that those who teach are held in greater accountability. Mm-hmm. And so, you need to not be so quick to jump into a teaching mode in the church, because when you stand in the pulpit or you're sitting in a Bible study and you're teaching God's word and you're representing Him and His ideas, you're going to be held to a higher standard. Yeah. It's serious business. Right. Well, I had this thought the other day. Sometimes we don't look at legislators as teachers, but it's been said the law is a teacher. Like whatever the law says teaches us something about value. So if we're a society that accepts abortion on demand, we're basically saying that there is no sanctity of life, that murder is a totally great option to solve an unwanted pregnancy. We're teaching a lot of values in passing every law. Yeah. Every law has behind it some ideology, some system of ethics, some system of right and wrong. You can't bypass. Every law is a statement of right or wrong. Right. So it is a scary thing, a sobering thing, to be put into a position of leadership where you're casting a vote on these particular issues, because at that moment you're moving from a legislator to teacher. And I think it's important for those who hold positions of authority, whether it's school board, city council, whatever, the legislation that you pass is teaching. You cannot bypass that. You're making a moral statement. You're saying something is good, something is bad. This should be supported and promoted and celebrated, and this should be punished. And that's sober business right there. You're going to stand before God someday and give an account. I think of that passage at the end of Deuteronomy where it says heaven and earth are watching what's taking place right here. I mean, they framed out that moment in an amazing way, and I think it's important. Heaven and earth are watching, and the decisions we make, the teaching that takes place through my life, your life, through anybody that's in authority, all the way down to parents, right? And what goes on in your home. You're going to be held accountable for the messaging that you're sending. Yeah. And that's a sobering thing. So praise the Lord for the breakthrough there, and we want to continue to be vigilant. But I'll just say this, as I have been from the pulpit, as Indiana leads and as we stand for righteousness in every area, you will see a blessing of God that's going to be released upon our state. And I think that's what's going to be happening right now. Literally, as this issue's gone back to the state level, as it should, you're going to see all different states aligning in different places. We've already seen New York and California and Illinois, some of the more liberal states, go far to the left, far to immorality, all right? And you watch what begins to happen. You will see the blessing of God on states, I believe, economically, spiritually, in every way. And you'll also see God abandoning states whose leadership is rejecting him. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to watch it, I promise you, over the next decade. I think it'll become more apparent. But let's talk about talk about coming hot off the press. Just last night, I think we were all shocked to see that a sitting or former president of the United States home under siege, as Trump put it, by FBI agents who raided his home. Of course, none of that happens without a judge signing off on it. And from what I've heard, none of it happens without somebody in the White House issuing that raid to happen. So here you have a president whose personal home is raided and things are confiscated. Never before in the history of America has this happened. And I think this should be concerning for every law-abiding constitutionalist in this country, because this is just lawlessness at the highest level. Yeah, it's shocking lawlessness.
Yeah, I mean, I read the commentary from different sources. I think the liberals toting the same line here over and over again. They say no one's above the law.
Yeah, can we just pause there? Yeah. What a bunch of crap from the left. Did I just say that? I said that. Okay, but we have a president whose son has a computer laptop full of all kinds of everything from cocaine, illegal deals, and the president of the United States, through his son, being attached to all of this. We have Hillary Clinton, who expunges 33,000 emails, wipes them clean from her computer. This is all blatantly illegal behavior. We have insider trading that goes on all the time when spouses invest in certain stocks that they know as soon as they pass the bill the next day it's going to cause value there. I mean, we have such an arbitrary, lawless form of government. And I think it just stinks to high heaven. And let's just say, I don't know whether there's any evidence or anything for what's going on, but let's just say this is, for folks on the left, to say no one's above the law when every American watches it. How about the whole COVID thing? When we got them saying one thing and then Nancy's getting her hair done, she doesn't have a mask on. We got Newsom out there attending some partying,
restaurant.
We got AOC, having lunch somewhere where she's not wearing a mask. I mean, this is just absolute hypocritical nonsense. And I think most Americans are sick of it. I'm sick of it.
I think
there's no justice for anybody. The elite have zero accountability.
Well, someone, got a DUI and, they got off the hook because they know the friend, they know the judge or whatever, and you go 1 mile over a speed limit, you get pulled over, and someone says to you, hey, no one's above the law. What are you going to think?
How about, this is scary for me. It should be for every American. We just passed this stupid piece of legislation. Like, whatever the name of the legislation is that's being proposed, it's going to do just the opposite. So they passed some inflation, reduction act, which, okay, if you and I cannot pay our bills, we have no money, we're flat broke, but the solution is go borrow money and spend it all. That's going to help you get out of your personal home, economic crisis. We would all go, no, that doesn't make any sense. So that's just what we did now. But in that bill, 87,000 new IRS agents. This, we're talking about weaponizing the Department of Justice, weaponizing the FBI, weaponizing the IRS. This just becomes a weaponized, politicized group of 87,000 people that are now going to be looking into our business and seeking to extricate more money or punish, as we saw during previous administrations, punish people who don't share their political ideology. I mean, this is, when I say scary, not like we stay up all night worrying, we're Christians, we trust the Lord, but it should deeply trouble law-abiding citizens when the government is being weaponized in this kind of a way. I mean, like Trump said, they're not after me, they're actually after you, but they have to go through me. He said that when he was president. All the talk of deep state, all the exposure of the wickedness at the highest levels, and I believe he's right. In fact, you and I have talked about this. How do you determine, when you're looking at the political environment that's taking place right now, this man who's been attacked, he was attacked before he ran for office, he was attacked for the 4 years he was in office, and now he's still to blame after nearly 2 years. He's still to blame for everything going on. And I mean, the left fears this man tremendously.
Yeah.
Why?
And
why? What do you think's going on?
I think the left knows why more than I do. I don't know all the ins and outs, and even in this case with the documents at Mar-a-Lago, I don't know all the specifics. They got to get the warrant, all these different things. But what I do know is it's unprecedented, and many people come out and say just the political fallout for this is incredible, because it's what looks like you're sending. I mean, have the FBI has a stellar reputation. They've held on to that Hunter Biden laptop. They knew that it was a Russian collusion. They held on to that fact, how they prosecuted all these people who I mean, if you look hard enough, you can always find or make up some kind of data against somebody.
Right.
That's how this whole system works. You can look into every details. This is my argument for Trump, is purely by all the people who can't stand us, how hard they go after him. They know that they see him as an absolute threat. Yeah. And that's why I've seen over January 6th committee, everything. I mean, nothing. They're throwing the kitchen sink at him.
Okay, so I'm looking even at this January 6th thing, which the whole committee was absolutely bogus to begin with, because there was no representation. There was Republican representation, but it was the most democratic.
It wasn't right, because they should have been appointed by the Republicans. But no, Nancy Pelosi picked him.
Some of these citizens, first of all, sat in jails for months and months and months without any representation. Right. And now some of them are getting these serious prison sentences, when only a matter of years before we had entire cities being burned to the ground. And I don't know if any of those people are in jail. And we're talking about, violence to people's private property. We're talking about, arson. I mean, we're talking about serious crimes where some of these folks are going to jail for showing up and walking into a building that was unlocked from the inside. I mean, there's no breaking in.
Well, that's what should be investigated, is who opened those doors and who was inciting these. And they're apparently supposedly these FBI informants or working among the group. I mean, there's so much stuff to it that's not investigated. Which
the point is, it's lawlessness.
It's a documentary that's completely one-sided. That's what this is. That's why no one pays attention to it, because they know there's no cross-examination, there's no back and forth, there's no presiding judge, there's no opposition research. I mean, it's just one. It's a show. They actually hire
the due process of law. It is. It is a political show. It's theater. I think most of the American people get this. I think we're all waiting for a chance to lawfully express our views at the voting booth. That can't come fast enough, at least for me. And I'm sure I speak for many, many Americans. I can't imagine we have 2 more years before there's a presidential election. When you look at the absolute insanity and the total destruction of our nation right now. Yeah. God only knows what's coming in the fall. My point in all this is not that we sit here and whine and complain, but number one, we should be aware, we should be vigilant, we should be deeply concerned. And as you pointed out, we've got to raise our voices now more than ever. We cannot be silent. We've been silent for way too long. I don't know if we even want to get into this ideology today, because I'm not sure we've got the time, but probably next week when we come back together, if there's not a whole bunch of other crises taking place that we need to weigh in on, we're going to talk about this marriage between Marxist ideology and the sexual revolution. And that's exactly what we're witnessing right now.
Well, I would say even right now with this selective, they call it weaponization of legalism. Selective prosecution, selective how hard that law is going to come down. They're going to raid some conservative journalists, but the liberal journalists who's getting confidential information, they leave it alone.
Sure.
Where does that idea come from? The selective prosecution.
But we saw this with the bailouts. Remember back when Obama was in office, and there was the economic crisis. Well, the bailouts were not given across the board to every American business owner. Mm-hmm. The bailouts were given largely to industries that supported the party mm-hmm. and the party line. Again, it was crony capitalism. It's picking and choosing the winners, and that is not the role of government, is to pick and choose. Governments are to operate blindly to political ideology, and they're applied to all Americans. And we're just saying, again, a selective picking and choosing, which is the foundation of what injustice is.
Yeah, and the reasons because was the things we've been talking about. When there's no truth, when there's no sense of righteousness, and here's the thing: there's no true accountability to someone who's higher up. Right. Then in that case, might means right. Money is power. Right. So your goal in life, instead of appealing or pleasing or glorifying the one, or making sure you're not judged by the one who sees everything, when that doesn't exist, right? Your job is simply, or your function as a evolved organism from scratch, is to simply pursue the most amount of pleasure and power and money. And in that case, why? Of course you would do. You will use whatever asset you have to prosecute whatever your enemies are, may it be political or militarily, and that's how we're cascading so quickly into that level of thinking, which leads to barbarism. There's no more civilization. We just go after whoever. So on the other side, can you imagine the chaos when whoever's in power start killing, attacking your enemy? Have we seen that in history a couple of times?
Well, and again, we saw this, and still see this massive attack on the rights of citizens to protect themselves with a gun, a firearm. Yeah. And we're talking about the rights to go hunting. This has nothing to do with hunting. This has everything to do with protecting basic freedoms and recognizing that many times governments, without the boundaries established by a biblical worldview, without godly people, righteous people running the show, it devolves into a situation where, as you pointed out, where it's just absolute tyranny, and people's lives are destroyed, people's livelihoods are destroyed. This is why we have a Second Amendment, to protect the First Amendment. And so let's just take away all the smoke and mirrors. This is not about hunting. This is about protecting ourselves, basically, from a government that can go astray in a hurry. And this is why it's concerning right now. We're watching it unfold before our eyes, and this should concern everybody.
I just want to remind people, back in the old days, when one regime rise up to destroy another regime, they kill everyone in the previous regime. Like the kids, the dogs, the uncles.
And they do it under
nephews.
a higher moral vision, which is usually some type of revolution that's going to usher in a golden age of prosperity and blessing for everybody. Right. And that's why this whole, where we're at now, and we're not going to be able to get there till probably next week, but where we're at now, the marriage in our culture between Marxist ideology and sexual freedom is a dangerous concoction, because we're seeing just unparalleled sexual exploration, celebration, permissiveness of every kind of perverted thing in our culture, and it's done under the banner of oppression. So that if I say anything about your behavior, I'm oppressing you. Yeah. And so now we have to weaponize government to punish the oppressors. That's the scary thing. When you change the language, oppression used to mean some bad guys taking advantage of somebody else's basic God-given rights. Yeah. That's not what it means anymore. It means somebody like you or I saying, hey, you really shouldn't be acting that way. Right. And now I become an oppressor, and now the full weight of government falls on me, and I could end up having my livelihood destroyed, being thrown in prison, being fined. I mean, there's a whole, and now with a weaponized IRS, having somebody just, say, hey, do an IRS audit of that guy. And now my life is I'm under that tyranny and oppression for the next 2 years as I'm having to find this document, that document.
Yeah, because you don't have to do anything wrong. You just take all that resource and energy to go in.
It's just harassment.
Yeah,
and the point is, did you have any reason to question that I'm not paying my taxes? They don't need any reason. It's just now I get to harass you. Yeah. And we saw this again. This is not like we're talking theoretically here. Or this has already happened. This happened under the Obama administration when enemies of that ideology, they were selected at conservative leaders, groups that wanted to file for tax exempt status, were not granted tax exempt status if you were not part of the ideology of the left. I mean, we're not talking theoretically here, or this is not some theory. What we call it, conspiracy theorists. No, all of your conspiracies are coming true.
Yeah. I'm losing my status as conspiracy theorist.
We're not out in some cloud, high on some, drug that's causing us to have all this paranoid stuff. No, this is happening all around us. It's like been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a time to be speaking out. It's a time to be exposing lies. It's a time to be declaring, probably more boldly than we ever have, the truth about the gospel. It's a time for the church not to be woke, for sure. So anyway, well, hey, we didn't talk about anything that we had planned about.
We got to Wilhelm Reich.
We got three pages of notes here on someone that maybe people haven't heard of before. But how are we doing on time?
We're about.
Are we out?
We're about out. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's give an introduction. Just by way of review. Last week when we were together, we talked about the influence of Freud.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because we had, when I was on that national television show with Barbara Waltzer. What's the other name? You remember the lady?
I don't
remember. Anyway, she said in the interview to me, she said, well, where I come from, we're big fans of Freud. And she was using Freud to kind of discredit everything I stood for. And one of my favorite lines of that interview is I said, well, where we come from, we're big fans of Jesus. I didn't realize at the time how Jesus and Freud are in such diametrical opposition. But we said last week Freud was the one who basically made popular the idea that to be human is to be sexual. In fact, sexuality is the core of your being. Mm-hmm. When we get into Wilhelm Reich, who again many might not be familiar with, but Wilhelm Reich criticized Freud's theory on a lot. He was a disciple of Freud, but he criticized Freud in a lot of areas. And basically, he was a Marxist as well. Took a Marxist template and tried to have a synthesis of Freudian ideology and Marxist ideology. And that synthesis is where we are today. So we want you to tune in next Thursday because we're going to talk about why everything in our culture today is both political and sexual, and why most of the debate and most of the discussion is about microaggressions, about safe places, about oppressing somebody's sexual ideology or identity. 84 different ideologies and counting. I mean, we're having this we're going to have as many sexual identities potentially as there are human beings. That's how insane it gets.
Yeah, this is a spectrum.
It is. It's a massive spectrum that is ever increasing based on the creativity of fallen human beings.
Yep.
I also want to encourage you, tune in. I was just thinking, I had a little bit of apprehension. Do I really want to go here on sexual identity and jump into the cesspool that's all around us? But after the last 2 weeks, after what we're talking about today, the disintegration of the culture, I mean, I feel like this is as a prophetic of a series as we've ever done. So we've been exposing some of the true ideology, the true theology coming from the Bible, comparing it with the false ideologies of this Marxist Freudian synthesis we're seeing in our culture today. And I think folks are going to really get a lot of help out of this series. So you can go to our website here at Living Stones, lstones.org. You can go to our media page and you can have access to where we've been. But so I'm excited as the day unfolds because we're only on day 2 of the whole thing with Trump and the FBI. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes.
Yep.
In the meantime, stay aware, stay engaged, stay involved, be a voice for righteousness. Keep up the fight. All right, we win. When Christians show up, we win. So let's keep standing for truth, and let's keep honoring the Lord with our lives. All right, we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Thanks so much for tuning in.